62.3%. This is the real growth rate recorded in the single year of 2022 by Guyana, a small country with a population of 800,000, a territory no other country in the world has ever reached. It is a number that should literally be called a mathematical miracle. Looking beyond the surface, we see the true structure of money. This is econometrics. As of May 2026, more than 1.2 million barrels of crude oil are pouring out of the coast of Guyana every day. This land has now become a South American energy power threatening Brazil and Venezuela. Arithmetically, every single citizen here should be sitting on a golden seat. It should be normal for gold dust to fly in every street of the capital, Georgetown, and for people to have no worries about making a living for the rest of their lives. But the actual atmosphere on the ground is completely different. Opening a menu at a restaurant in Georgetown takes your breath away. The price of an ordinary lunch has already easily surpassed that of Manhattan, New York. Prices have pierced the ceiling, but the daily lives of citizens have not taken a single step out of the shadows of 2015, before the oil fields were discovered. Magnificent glass buildings pierce the sky, but in the residential areas behind them, the power still goes out several times a day. Wait a minute. There's something strange here. Statistically, the per capita assets of Guyanese citizens have exploded by tens of thousands of dollars. But their grocery baskets are lighter than before the oil fields were discovered. The fruits of wealth have certainly fallen from the tree, but it feels like someone is putting them into a huge box and moving them somewhere else entirely before they even hit the ground. This strange landscape where only empty boxes are left behind the world's fastest growth. You need to watch until the end to properly understand the twist in this story. If you watch today's video to the end, you will see the true path of wealth that the numbers don't tell you. When I first investigated this, I heard the sound of our economic common sense collapsing. I will unfold the suspicious evidence of why this prosperous Guyana is trapped in a prison of growth of its own making, one by one. Is this the result of simple operational immaturity, or is it the result of a very sophisticated financial fortress? We must now trace the true owner of that box and the identity of the secret signature recorded in 2016. Let's go to the very point where this huge gap began. Now let's look at the first piece of evidence on the investigators' table. It's the 2016 production sharing agreement signed by the government of Guyana and the global oil giant ExxonMobil consortium. At first glance, it looks like a boring legal document, but within this stack of papers is a sophisticated legal straw designed to siphon off money that should be landing in the bank accounts of 800,000 Guyanese citizens. There are two numbers we must keep firmly in mind. Evidence 1, a 2% royalty. Now, how much do ordinary oil-producing nations with bubbling oil fields actually receive? In common sense terms, 10% is the baseline. And if geographic conditions are favorable, they can take up to 20%. Yet Guyana signed off on a mere 2%. Isn't that strange? Even a local convenience store owner wouldn't sign such a disadvantageous contract while selling their own goods. Look at this number once again. The 2% royalty you just saw is only the beginning. The real poison lurks in the four words cost recovery, cleverly hidden between the lines. According to Article 11 of the contract, ExxonMobil has the right to take up to 75% of monthly crude oil revenue as reimbursement for their prior investments before paying any dividends to the state. Simply put, it works like this. If Guyana sells $100 worth of oil, ExxonMobil immediately funnels $75 into their own vaults. They declare, since we spent money developing the fields, we'll take this much out first. If you were a business partner, would you accept these terms? It's a magic trick where 3/4 of the revenue legally evaporates before it even touches your hands. Let's hear from a civil society representative. He says, expert. In fact, it's highly likely that even the top-tier wine ExxonMobil executives drink in Manhattan and the fuel for their private jets are being paid for with Guyana's oil money. But we don't even have the right to see those receipts. In reality, the Guyanese government has virtually no personnel or systems to monitor where and how this money is spent, or the details of those receipts. No matter what amount ExxonMobil records in the books, a bizarre structure is completed, where national GDP figures soar, while the government's own vaults collect only dust. The entire nation has been transformed not into a place where assets grow, but into a workplace dedicated to paying off someone else's debts. Now the real question remains, why did Guyana's leaders so readily sign this document, which is tantamount to a suicidal act of handing over the nation's entire future? On the day this absurd contract was signed, what was exchanged in that meeting room was a deal far more lethal and vast than mere money. The hidden price they wanted more desperately than oil, which was never free, is now slowly rising to the surface. Let's calculate very coldly how much ends up in the hands of the Guyanese government when $100 worth of oil is sold. First, $75 disappears into ExxonMobil's share. It's under the pretext of recovering their expenses. Then only $25 is left. Guyana and ExxonMobil split this in half again. Even with a 2% royalty added, the amount the Guyanese government actually gets is only about $14 to $15. After giving away $100 worth of national wealth, the owner takes home less than the price of a single chicken. Take one more look at this indicator. Let's pause for a moment. What's truly suspicious is this next part. That 75% cost ExxonMobil takes. There's no system in Guyana to monitor whether that cost was actually used to pump oil or for the management's lavish parties. There are no experts or accounting firms to verify the receipts. If they submit a paper saying $75, the whole nation just has to nod and say, yes, okay. That's not all. Look at the next data. Behind this giant hole lies another trap we couldn't have imagined. The international NGO Global Witness analyzes that due to this unusual contract, Guyana has already lost billions of dollars in opportunity costs. It's called cost recovery, but in fact, a dedicated pipeline has been legally installed within the framework of the law to send national resources directly to a multinational corporation's vault. While its citizens groan under murderous prices and struggle day by day, the nation's treasures are disappearing into the pockets of giant capital across the sea without a single receipt. This is too meticulous and sophisticated to be seen as a simple contractual mistake. So now one bitter question remains. Did Guyana's leaders really not know about this ridiculous calculation? No! They knew the meaning of this unequal data better than anyone. Nevertheless, the real reason they chose silence, condoning this giant 75% black hole. The price they wanted more desperately than money, more precious than oil, was hidden in this cruel silence. The death sentence-like task directly linked to the survival of this nation, which is solved just by the giant dinosaur ExxonMobil floating off the coast of Guyana. Now we must ask the real question. Why did Guyana's leaders sign such documents, handing over the nation's future at a quarter of the price? They were by no means foolish. Rather, they were intensely realistic. Let's unfold the map. To the west of Guyana, a massive wave called Venezuela is always looming. Venezuela currently claims the Essequibo region, which is 2/3 of Guyana's entire territory, as its own. They are even deploying troops near the border, ready to push in at any moment. There is virtually no way for Guyana, with a population of 800,000, to defend itself against the 22 million strong Venezuelan military. Here, ExxonMobil takes on a completely different identity. More than just an investment firm, it becomes a private mercenary group draped in the Star-Spangled Banner. The world's most influential American company has embedded tens of trillions of won in capital deep within Guyanese waters. Venezuela attacking Guyana means touching ExxonMobil's massive assets, which serves as a powerful signal for direct U.S. intervention. Guyana didn't just sell oil at a bargain. It invited ExxonMobil, the world's most expensive human shield, into its territory to protect its lifeline. It means they gave up resources to outsource national security. It starts now. It's time to face the other side hidden behind this massive deal. To actually make this judgment, you only need to check 3 things. These are practical indicators we should use when judging the health of foreign investments. First, new one. Check if the cost recovery limit exceeds 50% of sales. The higher this number, the greater the risk that the nation's wealth will be privatized into corporate vaults. Second, see if the local hiring obligation clause is actually working. Without substance, technology transfer is just an illusion. What's third? You must check if third-country arbitration is possible for dispute resolution. This is because legal asymmetry eventually leads to the gradual loss of sovereignty. The dilemma of choosing capital for security, but there is no such thing as a free shield. This immense power Guyana borrowed is now even shaking the nation's laws and policies, gradually changing the very constitution of this land. At the point where this dangerous deal finally leads, we will witness the birth of a new type of nation, the 2026 model. It might be a new form of wasteland controlled by the gravity of capital, entirely different from the independent nation we knew. All while the voices of the Guyanese people, who should be the masters of this blueprint, have been deleted. Now let's take a step further into that chilling truth and see what signals the price of that silence is sending us. Ultimately, the path Guyana has chosen is clear. It has sacrificed its resources to buy a shield named survival. However, the bill for that transaction is returning with figures far more painful than expected. The optimism that believed everything would be solved once oil struck is now crumbling miserably before the reality of the disintegration of the state as an organism itself. Look at the indicators. As of 2026, Guyana's indigenous manufacturing has effectively ceased operations. Farmlands have become overgrown with weeds, and traditional industries are withering away one by one, unable to cope with the skyrocketing prices and wages. Instead, that void has been filled only by the mirage of black gold. The phenomenon where a country's domestic economy collapses despite having abundant natural resources is called Dutch disease in economics. Simply put, it is a severe illness where a nation's basic stamina is exhausted by relying solely on a specific resource. While Guyana's youth spend their time providing simple labor around the massive facilities of global energy giants instead of learning skills for self-reliance, the nation's independent growth engine has completely rusted away. Now let's coldly redefine Guyana's identity. This country we see on the map is no longer a sovereign state in the classical sense. This is because the core functions of the state, legislative power and control over security, have effectively been outsourced to specific capital. Guyana now looks more like a massive offshore business site managed and operated by mega capital, a kind of special purpose vehicle, rather than a nation. A bizarre system where capital designs the draft of laws and the protection of corporate assets becomes national security. This is the chilling reality of the 2026-style corporate state we are witnessing today. When the gift wrapping of that brilliant GDP growth rate, which the whole world watched with admiration, was peeled away, the bare face of growth revealed was, in fact, merely a fortress of capital borrowed with the soul of the nation as collateral. In reality, inside this fortress, Guyanese citizens are merely observers of abundance, never the owners. This paradox where statistical figures pierce the sky, but the people's wallets only get thinner. This is not an accidental failure, but the result of a box designed that way from the beginning. Everyone, so near everyone, can you see it now? The single destination that all these signs and signatures point to. This cruel report card Guyana faces might be the predetermined path that many countries dreaming of becoming resource powers are already treading. And all of this, eventually it all converges into one. Can you see it now? In the end, what awaits at the end of the road, Guyana has walked. What we witnessed was a giant capital-driven offshore workplace in the form of a nation. As of 2026, the cold blueprint hidden behind those brilliant indicators is now racing toward its completion. Capital is never swayed by emotions. It simply plants a flag where there is profit and packs up without hesitation as soon as costs begin to eat into those profits. Imagine the point 5 years from now when the music of the oil boom stops. What will be left on the seas of Guyana then? The modern buildings lining the coast might remain like ornate tombstones that have lost their owners. A party of growth designed to fill the vaults of giant corporations rather than the wallets of citizens. What remains at the end of that banquet will be a wasteland that has lost its self-sufficiency and the weight of debt that the next generation must carry for a lifetime. The case of Guyana is coldly asking us, is the place where your assets are accumulating a solid foundation that can protect itself? Or is it a glamorous fortress where someone will stay for a while and then leave? The person who reads the flow of assets and the person who is read by that flow, the difference is much thinner than you think. But that minute gap will become the real boundary that determines your position 10 years from now. And all of this, eventually it all comes together. Do you see it now? So now this question remains, where will be the next fortress, designated by this giant capital after Guyana, to exchange security for resources? Beyond the surface, seeing the real structure of money, Econometrics delivers complex economic issues clearly in easy language that anyone can understand. In the simplest words, but with more depth than anyone else, we will broaden your economic insight. Your support through subscriptions and likes gives us the strength to create better videos. This has been Econometrics, the channel that reads all the world's issues through the flow of money.